And welcome to Around the Ozarks Spotlight. Each week we uncover the stories behind the people who live and work right here in Southwest Missouri. Those individuals with entrepreneurial spirit who work to better the lives of others or put pen to paper to write books about the stories and history of the Ozarks and its people. I'm your host, Scott Meier, and today we're going to explore the world of both Missouri's radio and television industry with retiring president and CEO of the Missouri Broadasters, Mark Gordon. Hello, Mark. How are you?
Good, Scott. How are you?
If I was any better, I'd be great. But I'm not great, so I'm good. How's that?
That sounds wonderful.
Now, Mark, we always try to pull things into why this is important for Southwest Missouri, because that's what Around the Ozark Spotlight's all about. Mm-hmm. It's important because you're a Southwest Missouri guy in the media business.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay. Sure. My family and I moved here in March of 1997, and I worked for about 3 years at KY3, and then got hired across the street to Color 10, and I was there for another 12 years, and then this job came up in January of 13. So we moved to Jeff City, but basically all my family's here in Southwest Missouri. This is home. And we are set to retire here June 30, and this is where we will be.
Well, you just built a new house, right? Just outside of Springfield. You're in Greene County, aren't you?
No, we're in Nixa, so actually Christian County.
Oh, you're in Christian County. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe a little tax break there.
Well, I doubt it.
Just a tiny one.
I doubt that.
Well,
I haven't seen the taxes yet, but I don't think Christian County, and every time a tax thing comes up, these people tend to vote for it.
Well, God bless them. That's all good. That's all good. I know you got a new auditorium at the high school, I guess, which is very nice.
I haven't seen it yet, but I hear it's great.
Yeah, someone at work had mentioned they'd seen it, and they said it rivals, certainly not in size, but in dimension of Juanita K. So it's I guess it's a really nice facility.
Yeah. They put on some good performances of those students out there, really good. And I guess they're going to use it for community as well. So.
Oh, that's great. Hey, Mark, one of the things we always like to talk about, especially with folks that have been in the industry for a while, and in this case, the broadcast industry, what's your why? What got you involved in it when you were a kid?
I was reminded, gosh, when I was 12 years old, I got to sit in a master control of a TV studio, and of all places, Juneau, Alaska, and watch a newscast. And I got hooked, and broadcasting's all I've really ever wanted to do. I didn't think I could do it. I didn't think I'd be good enough. So I had to go through like 4 or 5 majors in college before I landed on it. But, this is all I've ever known, all I've ever done. It gets in your blood. It's like, outside of my family, there's not much I enjoy doing more than hanging out with other broadcasters.
It's amazing in my short life on this planet. I actually know now 2 people that have lived in Juneau, Alaska. That would be you and the Springfield Symphony conductor, Kyle Pickett, who was a conductor for the Juneau Symphony.
Wow.
Which who knew Juneau had a symphony? But
Juneau is so small. Of course, when I was there was only like 18,000 people lived there. I think it's up to 30 now. So,
well, I think he mentioned that a lot of the players actually would fly up from California and Washington State. So it was a time of his life that I think he's happy to be here in a little warmer weather in Southwest Missouri. So you actually started in radio, did you not?
I actually, interestingly enough, my very first job was at a satellite TV station in Great Bend, Kansas. And I was hired as an announcer copywriter. So I wrote commercials and did the voice. And as you can tell from this voice, I wasn't very good at it. So I didn't stay long. For about a year and a half, I got to be the lone newsman and go out and film news stories and things like that. But there was only one newsman in the whole town, and I was it. And then I decided I couldn't make a good living at that. So that's when I got into radio, and we moved to Topeka and went to work in radio sales there. And that's where I got my start in sales and really got involved in management and things like that in that job.
It's interesting. I too started on the air, and then was in news for a short time, and also, but realized the best cars in the parking lot were driven by the sales guys.
I know. You have a much better voice than I do, though. So I think you could actually make a good living doing that.
I appreciate you for that. Thank you. I was blessed. Not with a singing voice though. And also I've been told I've got a great look for radio, even though I did news on television for about a year and a half. So, okay. So let's go back. So now you're in Topeka. How did you find your way to Springfield?
I actually had to go through Mississippi first. So I was working in Topeka, and I got there was a guy I knew, and that's what happens in this business, right? It's a guy who knows a guy, kind of thing, and knew of me. And I got hired to be a local sales manager at a television station in Columbus, Mississippi. So
where's that? Where the heck is that?
Columbus is south of Tupelo, about 60 miles. It's about 10 miles off the Alabama line. It's about 60 miles due west of Tuscaloosa. And it's part of an area called the Golden Triangle. So
sounds lovely.
Starkville, Mississippi, West Point, Mississippi, and Columbus, Mississippi.
Okay.
And I was there. We were there 7 years, and it was great for me, not so great for my family. So opportunity came to move to Springfield in '97, and we jumped at it, and it's been the best move we've ever made. So.
My guest today on Around the Ozark Spotlight is Mark Gordon. Mark is in the middle of retiring from the position of being CEO and president of Missouri Broadasters. I've had a pleasure of knowing Mark now about, I guess, all of the time that I've been in Missouri working in this business. So you went into Springfield, eyes wide open, and that was with KY3?
Uh-huh. Yep.
Now it was different ownership then, was it not?
Yeah, Schurz owned it at that time, and I went to work for Mike Scott. Mike had been the general sales manager, and he hired me as his replacement for that position when he became the general manager. So I got to work for him for 3 years, and what a wonderful place! What a wonderful operation! I'd never worked for such a strong station before in my life, so it was really eye opening. But it was a great opportunity.
No, absolutely. And then, so 1997, it was right after consolidation in our industry. And for those of you that aren't aware of what that was, in 1996, Wall Street got together with our politicians and convinced everybody that a mom and pop industry, which was broadcasting at that time, needed to be a Wall Street industry, and opened up the floodgates to being able to own massive amounts of radio and TV stations. But the only thing they wouldn't let people do was own a newspaper at the same time, which was odd. I used to work for a company called Park Broadcasting back in the day, and they used to own some billboards and newspapers. But they had to adhere to the the one TV and the two radio stations in any one market. But now is a consolidating effort, and radio got turned upside down. Television has taken a little while longer.
Yeah. Well, and there were still some leftover companies that the newspapers still got, and TV stations and radio stations got to be a part of it. Interestingly enough, when I was in Topeka, I worked for a company called Stauffer Communications, and they owned the Topeka Capital Journal. They owned WIBW AM, FM, and TV, and I worked on the radio side of that company. And then when I moved to Mississippi, interestingly enough, it was a family-held company. They owned a AM radio station, the TV station, and the newspaper in that town. So those were left over from many years before, and they didn't get asked to divest themselves. But when all that stuff happened, no one could do that anymore. In fact, some of those things had to be broken up.
But now today, and let's use Springfield as an example, there's only 2 owners in television.
That's right. And well, actually, there's a little different. It's a little interesting because KY3's company, Gray Television, they own KSPR and they also own KY3. But in the case of Color 10 and Ozarks Fox, there's actually a different owner. The ownership, the primary ownership, is called Nexstar Broadcasting, and they actually own Ozarks Fox and KOZL. And then there's another company called Mission Broadcasting that they partner with they have special arrangements and contracts with, and they run the company, but they don't actually own Color 10, which is a really interesting dynamic that I guess most people really don't care about.
Well, because you're backing off of being the president and CEO of the Missouri Broadcasters now, and Chad Mahoney, who will find his way on this program at some point to introduce himself, is taking over at the end of in June, right? Isn't the
He's
gavel
actually
handoff
in place now.
Yeah.
He's my boss now. He's telling me what to do.
Which I would give my left arm to hear. I think that's great. But, so let's take off your political hat for just a minute, if we can. Let's talk about consolidation. How about some real thoughts about consolidation as you see it from somebody who's been in the industry like myself for over 40 years?
Well, I think in the early days, it was okay. And a lot of folks thought it was necessary. And I can't, I don't know that I have an opinion necessarily on that, except that what it allowed folks to do is consolidate services, consolidate business functions, consolidate traffic functions, have one general manager oversee multiple properties. So it allowed for folks to save money and pay, hire people and pay people. And, as time's gone on, competition has just gotten plain crazy and different. When you and I got started in the business, gosh, I remember shooting a news story where they were bringing a satellite dish into the cable operator so they could get the superstation out of Atlanta, Georgia,
Sure, right.
And now we can see and listen to radio and television all over the place on any kind of device and things like that. And sadly enough, our industry is big tech dominates our industry. Big tech controls more marketing dollars than broadcasting does. People, stream and listen, audio stream and video stream programming and things like that. And so the competition is tremendously stiff anymore. So I think it's super important if we want to keep broadcasting solid and operational. We have to allow consolidation, and we don't have enough, particularly on the radio side. I think radio needs more consolidation.
Oh, I agree to an extent, and we can talk about that after we break here in just a little bit. I think what's good and bad for at least local radio, and in some cases, I think television, when you take an area like Southwest Missouri, and you've got a lot of these little towns that had good or bad, daily or weekly or semi-weekly newspapers, and the newspaper business is upside down. The newspaper business is pretty much a dinosaur, at least as we knew it, right? And now those towns, the only way they can reach out is really through their local media, because you can't get it if you got a tornado headed towards your town and you're living in Aurora or something like that, as it happened a couple of years ago. You're not going to know it unless you hear the siren. There isn't anything locally that has anybody physically in a building looking at a screen being able to tell you, hey, go down to the basement, this thing's on its way.
If someone asked me, people ask me about the status of broadcasting in Missouri, and I say, well, for good operators, the future's bright. Okay. And what is a good operator? A good operator is someone that's doing radio, but they're also involved in the website development, digital streaming, high school sports. They're doing all kinds of things. They are not a radio company anymore. They're a marketing company. So they've developed relationships with advertisers. They go in, they help advertisers grow their business, and they do it with a multitude of products. And those include and they include Google AdWords and YouTube video and Facebook ads and streaming video and all kinds of things, podcasting. They're doing all kinds of those things. So there are really good operators doing those kinds of things and have seen the future and realized they are more than an over-the-air terrestrial broadcaster. They have to be all things. They're streaming their signals over digital as well. So most of our kids are not listening to radio necessarily over the air. They're listening it through their phone on a streaming basis, but they're still listening. And so I think one of the sad things that's going on, of course, now too, is the fact that small town newspapers are going away. Going away because they can't keep up with the cost of things. They can't print a paper anymore. And many of these papers miss that digital opportunity where they could actually put their product on digital because they still stuck to the newspaper part of things. And they haven't made the transition as well. And should small town papers, people I don't think really realize this, one of the biggest things that supports small town papers is public notices.
Mm-hmm.
What happens is it's mandated in the state of Missouri by law that when you have to publish a public notice, whether it be, auctions or, people's property, you know what I'm talking
Right.
about.
Bankruptcies, all those things.
All that stuff has to be published someplace for people to see it so that they can file, claims on it or file against it or whatever. That all has to be done. And that's by law. So the state says that you have to spend money in a newspaper of record in their area. So they have to spend money in newspaper to publicize these things. Well, come on. How many people are going to the newspaper to see things? They're going to websites and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of move on. Should the time come, and I believe the time will come, when that will go away. That mandate of publishing in your local paper will go away. And when that does, these really small town newspapers are going to go bankrupt, because that's what keeps them alive. So,
well, hang on to that thought. We're going to be back in a moment with my guest today, Mark Gordon, the soon-to-be retiring CEO and president of Missouri Broadasters. And we'll be back on Around the Ozarks Spotlight right after these messages. I'm your host, Scott Meier. See you in a moment.
Hey, everybody, it's Ethan and Sarah Forhetz from your favorite podcast, Around the Ozarks in 5. I'm sure you've been wondering, how can I get even more amazing stories, events, and witty banter to start my day?
Well, look no further. Here we are. Sign up for our daily newsletter. You'll have what's going on around the Ozarks right at your fingertips each weekday morning.
Yeah, just go to aroundtheozarks.com, click on the newsletter tab to sign up.
Thanks for listening to Around the Ozarks in 5. We hope to see you in your inbox soon.
And welcome back to the second half of today's Around the Ozarks Spotlight. I'm your host, Scott Meier. With me is Mark Gordon. Mark is the president and CEO. Do we say emeritus yet? Is that where you can use a big word like emeritus?
Yeah, I can't have. There can't be two titles of that, and Chad's got the title now. So
that's right. Well, spell it and use it in a sentence. So he's the president emeritus of Missouri Broadasters, where he has to go to an office in Jeff City, which no one should have to do every day. But with the beauty of the pandemic, he's been able to do it from his new home in Nixa as well. It's interesting. Your house, I actually drove to your house. You're about midway between Ozark and Nixa. What makes it a Nixa and not an Ozark home?
You'd have to ask the city fathers that. I wish they'd put a stoplight out in front of our neighborhood, though, because it's pretty crazy.
Well, pretty soon, maybe they make that whole area part of Springfield. We'll see. It would help my tax base.
I'll check for that on this podcast, Scott. Can you get the city fathers to put a stoplight out there on Old Castle Road and CC?
I can give my good friend Cora Scott a call. We'll see what she'll do. But it's not in Springfield, so maybe they can't help you. Mark, one of the things that makes our business so interesting are the people. And I think you would agree with me there. I'm hoping you've got a story or two you could share about some of the people maybe that you worked with in Springfield. Don't have to use names if you don't want to, but sometimes that just is one of the reasons that there were shows like WKRP in Cincinnati that did so well, because just the crazy people you meet in this industry.
Well, I guess some of the crazy stuff, and you've been involved in this, is the crazy stuff is when you have to let someone go for cause. And, I've thought of some of those people and some of the crazy things they did and said. And I thought, really, you said that to her, or you kind of thing. So I think about that. But, one of the things I really appreciate so much is I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for Mike Scott. Mike was the general manager of KY3. I also indirectly, there was a gentleman named Bill Perkin, and some people know Bill. Bill had an ad agency here in town and stuff. And Bill and I met briefly up in Topeka. And so Bill was actually kind of a referral for me to Mike. And so I appreciate Bill getting me involved in that. And then, out of the blue, I'm sitting there, 3 years after I've been here, and I get a call from a guy that was the sales manager over at Color 10. And he said, "Hey, would you ever think about talking to us about a job?" And it just happened to be the timing was right. And so Kemp Nickel hired me. And, Kemp was a tough guy. And he was a hard driving guy. He is still a hard driving guy. He's still around. He sales was in his blood, and I learned a great deal from him. And, one of the things I think, he taught me a lot of things, but I think sometimes one of the lessons that people like you and I have to learn over time is that, unfortunately, sometimes one of the best management moves we can make is actually to let an underperformer go.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think people, I'm one of those guys. I don't like to be a mean guy. I don't want to be perceived as a mean guy. I want to be the nice guy, right? But the problem is that when we're running these operations, sometimes we don't realize the negative impact underperformer has on your whole team. And
it can be a cancer. It can definitely be a cancer. And I think one of the things that makes it so attractive to be in this industry, at least back when the industry was a little had more people in the building, are the egos. You've got a lot of egos in this business, and egos can be healthy, and egos can be unhealthy. But at the end of the day, you need people that are extroverts, not introverts. If they're working in the field of sales, on air, in news, certainly. One of our best salespeople that I worked with years ago was a news guy. And he looked out in the lot and saw the better cars were driven by sales guys. He quit the news side of it and went into sales. He was a really good salesman, but he had that kind of a personality. Yeah.
But what happens is that if we're not careful and we keep somebody that's really a kind of a cancer, as you say, in the building, that you stand a real risk of losing your very best people.
Right.
Because they're the ones that take on the burden of the extra work, because the one that the cancer isn't pulling his or her fair share. And so you end up with that. And that, to me, it took me a while to learn that. When it shows strong leadership when you get rid of somebody like that, the rest of the team shows a greater respect for you and appreciation for you. And you tend to retain really good people, really good performers. They're less likely to go someplace else, because you see the angst that they're going through, having to take over and fill in for someone that's not doing their job.
One of the lessons that I learned from someone who really was more of a bean counter than he was a media person, but he was running our company at the time. But it's so true, and it's probably in every business, but certainly in broadcasting, was favors become expectations. And there are times as managers you have to say no, and you're not going to be the most popular guy in the building. But the bottom line is, people need direction, and there are times when you have to say no. Yeah, and there's times where I haven't, and it came back and bit me. So.
I just thought of a story I'd share that I'll take off topic a little bit. I think, all of us were here. I don't know if, Scott, you were in the market yet. I think you were here in the ice storm of 2007. Were you here?
No, I missed it, but we were here on vacation, believe it or not.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So we experienced it.
Yeah. So that was a very interesting time for us, because, and also I went through a tower collapse, which I'll share with you real quick.
God, yeah.
But what was so frustrating about that was that, I was at Color 10 and KSFX at the time, and we did not have a generator. We had a generator at the Color 10 transmitter, but we did not have a generator in our building. And, remember that you heard stories, of course, but power is going off. They had to turn power. There was a point in time we missed a 6:00 news because they had to turn the power off to rehook the power to the rest of the neighborhood in our area. And from our perspective, it was so frustrating, because KY3 had a generator and they were always on. People tell stories all the time. You miss those opportunities. And for some viewers, that's something that changes their habits forever.
Yeah.
And it was just, it was one of those situations we had no control whatsoever. And it was just so frustrating to go through that. And that was one of those points you and I talk offline about. You're writing a book, and I always say that's a chapter in my book, which I probably will never write, but that is definitely a chapter in the book, going through that ice storm and all the dynamics of that. Sure. But our team did a wonderful job covering it. Our stations, it was all hands on deck. We had to get people go pick people up that couldn't drive because of the bad roads and stuff. It was just you learn about the quality of our people when you go through something like that.
Well, you think about the things that you and I have gone through in our broadcast careers, Mark. I mean, I remember the moment in my office when the Challenger blew up. I was having a department head meeting, and we had it on because the teacher was on it, and it was kind of a thing. And just the silence in the room of people wondering, what did we just see? I was standing in one of our studios when the second tower was run into by a plane, a 9/11.
Yeah.
And the announcer said the F word, and he looked at me because he was live on the air, and he looked at me like, "Oh my God, I'm so." And I'm like, "Keep it going." I mean, this.
Yeah.
That's a reaction. What just happened? What did we just see?
Yeah.
Do you recall those times when
Of
and where you were?
course. Of course, I remember exactly where I was when the 9/11, exactly where I was, and I can even remember one of the salespeople in the office. I can remember who it was, and I can remember what she said. She says, "Oh my God," and those are times you never ever forget. It's just a horrible time. And I remember that. We got a call one time. It was funny that same year, 2011, November 30th of that year, we were in a sales meeting, and all of a sudden we got a call, and we were told by an engineer of a radio station there in town. Our Fox station shared a tower with a radio station in town, and ice had melted awkwardly on guy wires. And it melted, and people don't understand, but those towers are really held up with guy wires that go out. They aren't held up just standing there. They have to have those guy wires. And we had ice had built up on the wires, and the sun came out and melted them, didn't melt them equally. And so their weight pulled that tower, collapsed that tower. Wow. And it happened to be that this was in November 30th. And the amazing thing was that we happened to have this little event the next year at the end of the year called the Super Bowl that actually involved the St. Louis Rams.
Oh my God.
And you talk about moving mountains. We moved a transmitter, we moved towers, get everything up and running. And it was phenomenal, all the things we did. And then we had to take care of our advertisers, because I don't know if people realize television stations in Southwest Missouri cover a large swath of Southwest Missouri and counties in northern Arkansas, and as such, that's our whole area. And many people watch us over the air. And we lost about half of the coverage area with that tower collapsing because we had to put it on temporary tower that didn't go as far. And all the different things involved with getting that station back on the air were amazing.
Mark Gordon, my guest. Mark, the president, and about to give that up, of the Missouri Broadasters. Great job, and has done a great job in that position. In the few minutes we have left, Mark, there's a reason I have my gray hair, but having done a little research on your family, I think we share them. I have one son and three daughters, and you have one son and three daughters, correct? Yep. Yeah, and mine went in about age 42, so that was about the high school years. And the second thing is, you and I've got a little bet coming up for this weekend, which when this airs, we'll have known what the score is. But I see you're a K-Stater, and I'm a big Michigan State guy. So
so we get to play one another.
Yes, we do.
So what kind of bet do you want to put on it, Scott? Dinner, breakfast, lunch?
Yeah, I think any one of those three, Mark, now that you're going to have a little time. And don't be afraid to try to start writing a book. You'd be amazed what comes out as you keystroke, because it's, our business, because we're so heavily involved in our business and have been for so many years, we take for granted other people that see our business as being something unique, and it is unique. It is unique, and the stories, my goodness, there's so many stories.
There's so many stories. We would have to leave the names off some of them, though, I think, Scott.
Well, once you are actually retired, I hope you can carve out another half hour to join us, and we can talk a little bit about some of those stories, give you a chance to think some of them through. But I think when you get a chance to share with our viewers and listeners, and now we can say viewers, because this is also seen as a podcast, not just a broadcast. It's really amazing. We've had a chance to work with some pretty interesting people.
We sure have.
And some good people. I'm sure when you were in sales, Ned probably was a character in the sales
Oh
department. For a
yeah,
while.
he came into our office all the time with his coffee cup, and anybody that knows Ned needs to ask what his coffee cup looks like. It's never been washed, never been washed. And
That's one of those. that's not. But I'll tell you what. There's no more competitive guy in all of America than him. Ned Reynolds and I play tennis together once in a while, and I'll tell you what. For an 80-year-old guy, he can chase me around the court pretty well.
One of the things special about him is that he's kind and gentle to everyone that meets him. And sometimes people, on air get a little bit big-headed and stuff and think, that they're above others. And Ned is absolutely the genuine article and a great man to be around and hang out with.
Mark Gordon, I want to thank you for being a guest, and I hope you'll come back again soon.
Absolutely.
Congrats on your retirement.
Thanks,
I want to thank Mark and all of you today for being around with all of us on Around the Ozarks Spotlight. Also, my producers, Taylor Worley and Jay Stevens, as well as all of you for joining us today. If you happen to miss any or all of today's program, you can always find it in its entirety on the MidwestFamilySpringfield.com website, the AroundTheOzarks.com site, or even our new Around the Ozarks app, ATO app. You can find that on Apple or Android App Store. And you can hear and view today's show as well as all the earlier shows, both last year and this year. I'm Scott Meier, and remember that every day is a gift. Enjoy life. Thanks again, Mark. Have a great day.
Thanks, Scott.